Welcome back to the lab, folks. Today we're going to continue on with our guitar amplifier that we're building. Now, if you recall, last time we actually built up a version of the output section here. And the only thing we've changed going forward here is we removed the volume control at the front of it. And I've put in an allowance for a capacitor here, and I'll have more of a discussion on that when we get down to the lab to actually show you the test setup that I did. And I put in here a resistor, which I think did improve things a little bit. I didn't put in a very high value. I did try a higher value. It didn't seem to do anything much. It actually slowed down the response a little bit and made that crossover distortion a little bit worse. Putting in a low value, this 470 ohm resistor improved things. So that's basically the same. So consider that to be a proven module. And we're going over here. We put in a tone control. Now this took a lot of time, I tell you. All these stages interact. So basically here you have a variable high pass filter and a band pass filter here, and they feed into this, both of them feed into this point where we have a variable low pass filter, and that gives us our low, mid, and high range. The values that you see here were very much the result of experimentation, except for the 50K potentiometer, but I had to mess around with the other values in here quite a bit to get it the way I wanted. Trying to calculate this was just a nightmare, so I said, okay, here's a guess. I went down with the guess and I put it together, and then I changed things in order to get what we end up with here. And we'll go down and look at the results in the lab in a little while. Now over here we have the preamp section. Another thing I found, like I was just going to use another TL081, but one thing I found with that is that there was an interaction between the tone control and the op amp, and sometimes you would get a certain combination of tone control settings and waveforms coming through the op amp that cause some oscillation. So when I turn this one all the way down, this becomes unity gain, and in those cases when I had to turn all the way down, I didn't get any interaction with the tone control. So I decided to put in a buffer here and just use a TL082. What I now have in here instead of a volume control is a gain control, and this controls the gain of this amplifier. I may need to tweak some of these values here a little bit. We'll have to see once I get this built up and we can test it a little bit further and see, because I don't want it to clip too much. Now, one thing that the TL082 doesn't have is a compensation for offset. So that's why I've done this here. So if you look here, there's actually a resistor here in the input section, which I guess I should have included over here. But this just ground references, for DC purposes, ground references the positive input. And then I put this big capacitor in here to take away the ground reference for the minus. So that'll kind of help with any offset. It shouldn't show up on the output. And of course, because it's a huge capacitor here, it's an AC ground. So that works out that way. And on the input here, I just put in a little bit of protection. I'm putting in a little 1/8 inch stereo plug here. And I may just leave that in as a way to connect the front panel inputs. So I have two inputs, and they would come down through a little stereo shielded cable to a 1/8 inch stereo plug to plug into here. And comes through a couple of 10K, put 100 PF in here, 1 microfarad to block any DC, and then a couple of diodes in case there are any big spikes come through, just protect the input of the operational amplifier. So they go to plus 15 and minus 15 volts. So that's what we've come up with for a circuit, and I basically built this up. I didn't use a TL082 in my building, but in the final implementation, when we send this off for manufacture, we'll just have the TL082. And I also added in here a couple of 100 UF capacitors just for some bulk bypassing. So enough talking. Let's go downstairs and actually look at this thing work and listen to it. I'm going to play some music through it, and we'll hear the tone controls working. You guys let me know if you think I've got it basically right. Now remember, this is going to be for a guitar, so it's not going to be required to play full range music or anything like that. But anyway, let's get into the lab and have a look at what we have so far. All right, folks, here we are down in the lab, and this is my experimental setup. You'll remember this from the last video. This is the basic amplifier itself, the power amplifier. And that would be this section here, as we saw upstairs. Then here's the tone control, this section here. And here is the preamplifier in here. And this is all this stuff here, the input section. I didn't put the diodes in yet because I'm in a controlled environment here.
Also, I want to note that even when I do laboratory experiments like this, if it's anything more complicated than a resistor and a capacitor and a diode or something like that, I'll do it on a PC board. So what I had made up quite a while ago, these PC boards here, which are rather large. The idea behind these was that I could build an entire computer on it. I made allowances here for dips, a couple of power rails, and the two sides of the board from here over and here over have separate power rails, which can be connected together. Like I connected this one together here. And then I put in a variety of connectors, a couple of DC power jacks, a couple of layouts here for power supplies, some indicators here, a 1/8 inch stereo jack here, a couple of push button switches. These layouts here, these will fit potentiometers or screw terminals like these. Screw terminals fit in there. I encourage you to get a layout together for yourselves. These are just fantastic to have around. Okay, we're all ready to proceed here. Sorry about that interruption. I had somebody come to the door. Okay, so we've got everything set up here. I've got the controls are all set in the middle, I think. So I'm going to do the treble first, mid-range, and then the bass. Okay, here we go. Here comes the music. Okay, go ahead and turn up the treble now. And then turn it all the way down. Okay, now the mid-range, we're going to turn it up. Turn it all the way down. Now the bass, we're going to turn it all the way up. Hope these microphones can pick that up. And then turn it all the way down. So it seems to be pretty good, and actually the sound quality is not half bad. Let me show you what the waveform looks like. I've got to set that up. I've got to get my oscilloscope started up here. Okay, so we got 400 hertz going into it here, and we've got 200 millivolts going in peak to peak, and coming out we have 20 volts peak to peak, 7 volts RMS going into this resistor here, so that we don't have too much noise. And let's expand that signal there, expand it up, and we can see the crossover distortion is well, it's still there, but it's so tiny. You can see it there just above the zero line, right there. It's now an insignificant part of the signal. So that was the result of adding in a resistor, which is on the underside of the board there. That's this resistor here. Now, however, I did put that capacitor in there. I've cut it off. It's right there. So I put it across that gain setting resistor there, this one. And when I put that on, things went south real quick. So I've cut it. I'm going to leave it in the final layout so we can try experiment with it again, because I think that, you know, the way that I have all these power supplies hooked up here through these long cables may have partly been to blame for some of that. I don't know, but I'm going to leave my options open. So there will be a space there to pop a capacitor in. That's it. So yeah, let's go upstairs and have a look at the layout.
Okay, so here's the layout I came up with. And we've got our tone controls along one side here, so that would be like the panel side. We've got our input jack here. Now I imagine, as I said before, that would go up via a stereo cable up to a couple of jacks on the front panel. This is the power coming in. This is the power amplifier section. And this here is the preamplifier right here. So that's it. I wasn't able to get as nice a layout as I normally like. There's a little bit of traces here on the bottom of the board, but there's no way to avoid that. Overall, though, we should have a really good ground, and we have certainly large enough traces to spread out the power, considering that this thing maybe puts out 8 watts at maximum. I'm going to produce the Gerber files. When it comes in, we'll build one of these up and we'll do a little bit more testing on it. And by then, I might have a better idea of the gain I'm going to need once I get my son over with his guitar to help me decide that. All right, folks, thanks for coming out today. I really appreciate it. Bye-bye.